This week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from NHTSA. Do you think it's okay to drive stoned? Well, the truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. So stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI.
Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, August 15th, 2019, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the Tested Podcast. This week I'm Norm, and we have our caffeinated crew of podcast regulars.
Getting
to my
there.
left, it's a big TV. If you're watching the video, maybe I'm not covering as much
TV
of
needs
it
a
now.
name.
I know. Oh, that is a fantastic idea. You have not been introduced yet. You're not allowed to talk. But you out there, what should our name of our TV be? That's up to you. Please place your suggestions in the comments. Jeremy Williams is sandwiching the TV with me to the left of the
boy.
TV. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm fine. How are you, Norm?
I'm caffeinated. Are you caffeinated?
I'm getting there.
Do we have a coffee update?
I'm off sugar this week, so I'm going straight black with some of your
Office cold brew.
Why,
Yeah, some of the office
why would
cold
you
brew.
do that to yourself? Why would you be on sugar?
Just trying to be healthy for a couple weeks.
Do you not
Sounds
use
terrible.
sugar substitutes?
My mood has suffered. My whole family agrees with me too.
Oh, no. Well, we'll see if the listeners agree with you
Yeah.
as well. And then, of course, you heard him earlier, Kishore. Hari, Kishore, how you doing?
Sugar is the spice of life.
Or at least anything that activates the sugar receptors in the tongue, because, fake sugar also works for some people.
I'm doing great, Norm. Thanks for asking. I'm highly caffeinated. Ready to go.
All right. You got your caffeinated beverages next to you. So we took your advice out there, and if you watch the podcast, because you can listen to it or you can watch it on YouTube.
Oh, did they say? I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
people pointed out that while we do have a new TV in the podcast room, which we're going to use judiciously and we're going to experiment with, we want to figure out the best way to use it. We might use it in the future to have guests on for some type of Skype conversation. We're definitely going to use it to play some videos that we're referencing, but not rely solely on it, because we are an audio podcast as well. But last week we had it positioned in the room where I was blocking half of the TV. So we've changed the camera position. Hopefully it's a little better this week. And Kishore is running the V part of AV. Jeremy, you on the A?
I'm on the A, but not for the TV.
No.
Strictly.
We're not getting any A from TV right
No.
now.
There's no TV.
I mean, this podcast is going to turn into a tank ball podcast soon.
Oh.
With me controlling the
You
beat.
know, I had
just
no
gonna
problem with it running the whole time in the background.
I played
no
for
audio.
the first time. This tank ball is a game that Jeremy and Sean worked on with Mike Micah over at Other Ocean, and you can play it on Mixer. I played for the first time.
No. Did you?
Well, it was technically a second time, but the first time I played was like the first stream you ever did.
When did
And
you play recently?
I played like 2 days ago, and I got creamed. Wow. That game's hard on the keyboard.
So
I need to hook up a controller.
Were you playing with the tank controls? Because there's
Yeah.
two ways to play. You can play with arrow keys to drive around, sort of user-friendly mode. But then you can do like I and K and E and D in order to like do a tank mode where you're like
I was in tank mode.
left and right and spinning.
I feel like tank
I don't
mode,
want easy mode. I want tank mode.
Right on.
It's called tank ball.
Yeah,
Exactly.
tank mode works better with a little bit of latency. Like, for some reason, when I do the tank mode, I feel like the latency should be there, as you would be if you're driving a tank, the responsiveness.
Interesting.
Yeah, at least my brain. Like, if I'm using WASD, just the arrow keys, the latency bothers me a lot more
Oh.
than with the tank mode.
Yeah, we'd like no latency. That would be the best option.
Yeah,
But it's very difficult.
Yes.
The fact that we're like around a second, we're pretty happy with that.
That's in the old. That's twice as long as in the old dial-up days. Dial-up was getting about 400 milliseconds
Yeah.
of latency. 200 if you're real lucky on a local server.
We were trying to do the cameras that the quadcopters use, the RF cameras.
yeah.
'cause they're almost no latency,
Yes,
right? Super
yes.
analog. But when we put 4 of those in one room, interference galore.
So you're not even
Couldn't do it.
talking about, and we can dive into this later, but you're not even talking about the latency from
Oh,
mixer
I
to,
am.
to people.
Like 4 people, it's about a second.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, it depends where you are in the world. and
you
where
find
your
Felt
next
a little
flight.
less than a second, but yeah,
Good.
Like on that level.
That's the spirit.
Right. Yeah. Closing those pipes. Anything you guys did fun over this weekend? We're in the middle of a heat wave here in San Francisco.
Cosplay prep. I have 2 cons coming up.
Silicon Valley.
this weekend and 2 weeks to Dragon Con.
Oh my gosh.
I did my homework. I watched The Boys.
Oh, why is that not in our show notes?
I can't say I watched all of it because I only watched the first 4 episodes, but I still feel like that's quite a commitment on my part. That's got to be half of them.
It is half.
And
Exactly.
I'm not so sure. Like you guys, it's not that great a show. It's okay, but it's loaded with one-dimensional characters. Like the main bad guy is like completely one-dimensional.
You haven't gotten to the end.
No, I haven't. But I've watched 4 hours of it. I think I should have an idea.
They're complex. You don't think Huey has complexity?
There's a lot
He's
of
the one you're supposed to relate to.
there's a lot of things in there that are just like they cross a line. There's kids on planes who are terrified of flying.
We warned you.
We warned you. We described that scene specifically.
There's
and
2 scenes like that.
Oh, there are more. Then there are more later on. It
You're
is
only
a
4 episodes in.
TVMA show.
Exponential rise.
And as I did say, it is not even, doesn't push the boundaries as much as some of the more repulsive stuff that
Yeah.
happens in the comics. So
Oh, okay.
they even held back by a significant amount, I think, for the TV show. But yes, it does push a lot of boundaries. I don't know if you want to say it crosses them.
I'll say that.
The showrunners talked about scenes specifically they had to cut because it did cross lines that even Amazon was not comfortable with.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And did they say what those scenes were?
Yes, I don't want to describe them.
Okay.
But it does involve.
Because it would cross a line.
It would cross a line.
I see.
And even describing it on the podcast here. Yeah.
There's a lot of sexual harassment and assault against women.
They did change so that is in the comic books for sure. It's one of the big plot lines, but they embrace the addressing of that and the ramifications of that in the show as they were making the show because of Me Too popping up. So they felt like, that there was the right moment to actually put that head on.
Maybe I need to keep watching them.
I think you do. I think
I'm going to say for your benefit,
Yeah.
based on your reaction to the first 4 episodes, I think you should stop.
Given that I'm on a flight tomorrow, if there's any more like flight disasters, I don't think I want to watch it.
yeah, it's not going to be a show you're going to want to watch on a plane. At least that episode.
Yeah.
I do want to make a correction. I had misspoken last week. The artist, so the Boys, the comic, is a creation of Garth Ennis, and the artist is Derek Robertson, and I said Robert Derrickson because I had Scott Derrickson, director of Doctor Strange, in the head. So I will make that mea culpa. I watched Glow season 3. Which
Oh, you went all the way through?
Yeah, it's 10 episodes. Goes like half-an-hour episodes each, 40 minutes, whatever. It's, I think, the best show on Netflix, the best show they're making right now, and I really hope it gets a season 4.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Best show on Netflix. I like Glow a lot.
tell me a Netflix original one that they have homegrown, not just licensed the rights to. I know a lot of people are recommending Dark as a science fiction show. That's a German show that Netflix is producing, and that's supposed to be very heady. It's supposed to be like if you like the twists and
Not our-
turns of Westworld.
Kid friends from the 80s in the Stranger Things.
So, really good point. Stranger Things and Glow, both kind of set in the 80s. I think Glow's characters are more developed. I think I like Glow more than Stranger Things.
That's
I
fine.
love Stranger Things. I love season 3.
I'm not saying it's better, but I did check out another show on Netflix called Atypical,
Haven't seen it.
and it's about an autistic kid and his family and his social life, and it's a comedy. But before we turned it on, my 12-year-old said, so hold up, what are the ground rules here?
Yeah.
If I just read the description, there's an autistic kid in this, am I allowed to laugh at it?
Oh,
And I said, of course, it's a comedy.
all right.
And it's well worth watching.
It's like Michael J. Fox
Yeah.
addressing full-on the Parkinson's when he was in Curb Your Enthusiasm and when he did that short-lived ABC show afterward.
Right.
What was I going to say? Have you heard of, I know we're not in pop culture yet. We still have our top story to talk about. But the one other Netflix thing, because I do wholeheartedly recommend Glow, The OA. Did either of you watch The OA?
Nope.
I watched the first season, but wasn't there some news about the OA?
Well, The OA was canceled.
Yeah.
It was canceled after 2 seasons. There's a very passionate fan base that wants to save it, and they've gone with the hashtags and the trending stories. But maybe I'll save the story for pop culture, because it's even elevated beyond that. Now there are conspiracy theories.
This is the week for conspiracy theories.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about
no, we're not
those
going to talk about it
on the
But this is
podcast.
the week for them.
Yeah, I'll talk about the OA on pop culture. Anyway, let's get to our...
Top story this week.
So our top story this week is probably top story for last week, but the event happened either as we were recording the podcast or right after we recorded the podcast. And that's Samsung's big second annual product launch. They do 2 every year, one for the Galaxy line of phones. It's in the springtime, and the summer/fall, they announced their new Note phones. So we have the Note 10. Note has bounced back after the disaster of the Note 7, after the exploding phones, burning batteries. We've made it to Note X, Note 10, 2 sizes. Got the Note 10.
They didn't
Note
do
10
Note
is-
X, did they?
No,
Okay.
they didn't. It's the Note 10. Note 10 isn't really a Note. It's like the smaller version. It's smaller than the Note 9. So it's kind of a streamlined thing. The thing that's the same is the Note 10 Plus is the same size as the Note 9. So it's this kind of weird dichotomy. They made 2 sizes, but really the Note 10 is shrunk down.
It's the Note and the Galaxy phones have always been an interesting thing for Samsung, because they're fans of the Note phones for sure. And you have these 2 different product lines, and there are 2 different form factors, slightly different, allows them to do different ID things. But the Note has always been the device that you get if you were using Samsung's Gear VR headset. It was the big one, the big screen, obviously has their stylus built in, the S Pen. It was the one that you always were able to put expandable storage and removable batteries, but a lot of those things going away.
Yeah, I mean, the S Pen is still there. I mean, if they got rid of the stylus, I think this phone would die, because I think that's the number one thing the hardcore fan base is all about. But it's always been about top-of-the-line internals for an Android phone. Do you feel like that's still the case? I mean,
Yeah.
it still has it's like an insane amount of memory. I think it's like 256 gigs, which is high for the base model compared to other phones. It's 12 gigs of RAM on the Note 10 Plus. There's a 5G version of it that's apparently shipping. Who knows what that means?
The bigger body means slightly bigger batteries than what you find in the Galaxy phones. There is still micro SD, but this year also no headphone jack. Headphone jack is gone. People care? I don't think people will care.
I care. I do.
Do you really still care?
I do think people care. What is the problem with you people?
Some people care.
It's like you can't do both with a headphone jack.
I mean, clearly you can.
Yes.
People have shown that you can, but from a business perspective, no, you can't.
From a business, fine. So why are we in favor of it?
I mean, haven't the ship sailed at this point? Like,
guys.
what are we fighting
Whatever.
here?
Hey, I didn't bring it up.
Would you pay more for a headphone jack? $50 more.
Look, this stupid question. I shouldn't have to pay more. There's
You
plenty of
shouldn't.
room
No,
for a
no, no.
headphone jack.
There's absolutely,
Put it on there. Use all the wires headphones that you
100%
want.
Right. Yeah, the asymmetry that a headphone jack brings, and all.
Why do I need to pay more so that their business model makes sense?
Yes.
This is the stupidest argument.
It
It's
is.
so dumb.
But would you?
No.
Oh, out of principle.
Look, whatever. I have an iPhone without a headphone jack. I'm living. I'm still alive. It sucks.
True. But I think I do agree with Kishore. I think the ship has mostly sailed. I think Bluetooth is good enough that most people are fine using Bluetooth headsets, and
Unless you're on the super high end stuff.
and
At which point-
adapters of course can work from USB-C or Lightning in the case of Apple will work. It's not ideal. I also wish it was there, but I think we're all resigned to that world where
You have to
people are
recharge your
following
headphones.
Apple's suit. And
Great.
not only did that's how, last week I speculated, like we talked about some of the Apple's earnings stuff, and so much money they had made was from their wearables, from the watches and the AirPods. And I was like, how, I think 30 million people have AirPods now, and that's out of like 900 million people who have iPhones. So there's definitely a lot of room to grow. Even if they get to 1 out of every 10 people who have an iPhone buy AirPods, these $200 accessories for a phone because there is no headphone jack, that's tripling the amount of money that Apple is making, which is, increasingly a bigger part of their business. But my question was, how do you sustain that, right? Once all the school kids have AirPods, is there a need to buy next generation AirPod? Like, I was okay with the first gen. I don't need to buy the second gen. What's going to get me to buy the third gen? And I think it's going to be the battery. I think the battery being consumable and using it day in and day out and needing to replace that battery, that's what's going to force people to have to re-up on their AirPods.
So you make life worse and then make it slightly better.
And more expensive.
And then you got a selling point.
And then you got to sell it.
Now that's a business model.
Yeah. Other things announced at the Samsung event, there were some updates to their DeX software. This is the thing that allows you to plug the phones into a computer and basically run the version of the OS there. And also Galaxy Book S.
I think this looks interesting. I think when you compare it to, what are we at, Surface 6, right?
Yeah.
This Galaxy Book S is, I think, $1,000, which is a little cheaper than the Surface Pro 6. It's super thin. I think it's thinner than the Surface Pro 6, and it apparently has 23 hours of battery life.
So yeah, form factor for sure. This is essentially their attack on Chromebooks, and it's running in heavy partnership with Windows. In fact, Satya Nadella, CEO of Windows and Microsoft, was there at the event, which really shows this huge, strong tie because it wasn't just an Android phone event. It became a Windows event as well. And this is a Windows 10 laptop running on an ARM chip, on a Qualcomm 8CX ARM processor that's in a Samsung-designed laptop, essentially.
And it's running full-fledged Windows 10?
It's running, yes, full-fledged Windows 10 on ARM, which isn't new. And there are performance trade-offs, and
This is the future. We're going to see this with MacBooks in a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
I said that probably 2 years ago.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a great secondary laptop for a lot of people who are in that market for a travel laptop who are looking in the market, basically in the market for a Chromebook, because Google's out of that game now.
I don't know. $1,000 is probably too much for a secondary notebook.
It's for people with lots of disposable income.
But I do like the super thin design. I think we got away from those, and this is, at least a nod to return.
I really struggle to imagine someone buying this as their primary laptop.
Maybe. I mean, if you had some mostly Chromebook functionality, maybe this is powerful enough to do it.
It's like it's like when Martha Stewart came out with bought the MacBook Air, right? And that was her dream laptop, right? It was expensive, but the form factor was great and it was underpowered. This feels like Samsung and Microsoft's MacBook Air. Super thin, long battery life. If you're just going to be watching video or listening to music.
Using cloud
apps. Even though it runs Windows and using some local apps, maybe spreadsheets. But if you're doing any type of real productivity, I doubt this is going to be your even graphic design workhorse.
No, of course not. One thing I wanted to back up and ask about the phones. We're now getting 4 cameras as standard.
Yeah.
We're seeing that with the Notes. There's a telephoto lens. There's a standard main camera. And there's one other one on the back. I forget, wide angle, I think. And then the selfie front facing. Is that just going to be how it is now? We're going to see 4 cameras on every phone?
And maybe more as time goes on. It's a physics problem. The type of...
Oh, we'll get to that physics problem later.
Yeah, with the volume you have in the camera, and that's why there's the bump on so many of the backs of these phones now, that's to get people acclimated to the fact that you can only get that big of a sensor with that type of lens, and the only way to get a wider range is to use some computer vision and computational photography and combine different sensors and different lens arrangements, which we've seen already. I mean, Apple does it on every big iPhone since the 7.
This is just continuing the story that I think we've been saying for a long time. Like, these are commodity devices now.
Yeah, I do think the Note is in a weird place. I'd love to hear from people who love the Note because they use the S Pen. I think even Samsung knows a significant portion of people who buy the Note don't use the pen, don't use the stylus.
Does it mount to the phone? Is it like inside?
It's a slot. Oh, it's always had a slot built in. A slot that would also, presumably,
Don't say it.
be good for some type of other.
Hey, they
analog
added more
port.
battery in the space, they said, when they removed that thing that
Yeah.
we're not allowed to talk about anymore.
$1,300 phone. That's the new. I mean, if you're asking about new realities and people and expecting phones to have cameras, I think more so as a new reality are higher and higher priced phones. And even though there is the justification that your phone is, for many people, the primary computing device, if you look at hours on phone versus hours on any other type of entertainment or computer device, the phone probably blows that away. It's still really expensive. Yeah, and $1,000 for a phone, I think, only makes sense if you're buying a phone every, let's say, 4 to 5 years. Not every other year. Anything else in the Samsung event we want to talk about? Got that out of the way?
Out of the way.
All right. Hit that button. Okay. Can I talk about the OA now?
How do you spell it?
The OA. It's I'm gonna go into minor spoiler territory.
It's a good mystery to set up the first season.
There
But
is
go for it.
it's Jason Isaacs and what's the name of the lead actress? I don't want to get this wrong, but it's
Britt
Britt
Marling?
Marling. That's right. Definitely it's kind of a supernatural science mystery that goes on. And I will go into light spoilers. The OA stands for the original angel, although I don't think religious elements are a huge part of it. But the bigger thing is they're exploring what it means for this character to jump between worlds and dimensions. You can jump ahead 5 minutes if you, or let's say like 3 minutes if you don't want to get into these spoilers. And so you have this character who's running away from the villain, who's played by Jason Isaacs, who was Lorca on Star Trek Discovery in first season 1. And, just like that character who jumped between dimensions, this character they also jump between dimensions. And one of the things that happened, that big twist, here comes, at the end of season 2, the cliffhanger that it ended on is as she's escaping him, as she and her friends are jumping, the dimension they end up in, that's probably the end of the show, is our world. The world where the OA is a TV show, and you jumped into the bodies of the actors who play them. And so here goes the crazy obsessed fan conspiracy time. The fan theory, I love this idea, the prevailing fan theory, I really hope it's true, is that Netflix announced the cancellation of the OA, and all the actors in social media on the same day talked about, saying goodbye to the show, but that's a ruse, because now the show has become an ARG, an alternate reality game. Mm-hmm. And there will be a third season after some crazy thing is unlocked, because I wouldn't put it past Netflix. And I know the fans really want it to be the case.
This is crazy.
Yeah. People have production schedules, like TV production works a certain way, but they're hoping, people are like, okay, because of the way the show ended at the end of season 2 in our world, there's a chance that now the season 3 is happening in our world right now through events and through things that are not traditional television media that will eventually go back to being shown and filmed and put on Netflix.
All right, man. It looks like it was a long time between first and second seasons, over 2 years between the end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2. It's a long time.
I don't know the reason for that. I think that's.
Did you watch season 1 back in the day?
Yeah, I watched season 1. Not 2. I read the Wikipedia for season 2.
Oh, gotcha.
But after these conspiracy theories popped up, I'm like, ooh, this could get me back to watching the show.
I like the name. It's like the opposite of the OG, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Other stuff in pop culture. big merger, probably the big business news to happen this week related to our interests in terms of Star Trek. CBS and Viacom are now back. Paramount, CBS, they were one family. They split off, and now it looks like the family is united. Now, from a business standpoint, like, I don't know if this is strengthening their bonds to fight Disney, to fight the mega multinational corporation that is the Disney Corporation, or why exactly this is happening. But related to us, this puts Star Trek TV, including everything that's being produced on CBS All Access, from Picard to Discovery to the animated shows to the library of TV stuff from that was all under, it was all under the CBS ownership, and the Viacom stuff, which is the movies, the Kelvin universe,
JJ stuff,
the original movies,
The TCU, as like we like.
Sorry.
all under one corporate umbrella and potentially under one creative umbrella.
Okay.
That's exciting.
All Trek all the time?
Great.
I don't know.
No, it's good. I mean, obviously, the TCU, they have their own timeline, so that still has to be
Yeah.
maintained.
I think people can understand that.
Right? So that it's not like they all exist in one universe now, because
No, it's science
essentially they
fiction.
don't. Yeah.
I thought the beauty of Trek from my youth was having one compelling narrative at a time.
You're talking about the shows.
Yeah, and to have multiple going on now, which is what this may portend, I'm not as excited about.
You see, for me, it's always been about just serious, optimistic science fiction. And that is something that you can give me 5 shows like that, and I'll watch them. I like that.
Yeah, but they haven't given you a single one recently.
Well,
we got Discovery, 2 seasons of that.
That's
Picard's
not
coming.
optimistic.
yeah, that's the problem with that one. You're right.
So Star Trek is, I mean, that then you're talking about creative direction and less about a big universe. My hope for the Kelvin timeline, the thing that J.J. Abrams started with the reboot and kind of reinvigorized at least a lot of mainstream awareness of Star Trek and did so successively, is that I hope that timeline gets closed off and done and wrapped. Without, we don't know if there was going to be a next
And a
movie.
giant lens flare that the whole universe.
It was
just-
all a dream. It was all in the holodeck experience that Picard was watching, that Riker and Troy were watching the entire time. But I think it's done its service in establishing that timeline, and that timeline really feels like doing a TV show there would be too expensive, or there's not a lot of interest in that aesthetic from the TV side. Like Discovery's kind of co-opted a little of that, but it's still very much set in the traditional TOS timeline. It's a prequel to that. And Picard pushing forward in the TNG, right? Kelvin universe going forward, it overlaps. There's too much overlap. So I would love if Quentin Tarantino was going to come in and do his Kelvin universe movie, let it somehow, from a story standpoint, at least bookend the 2009 Star Trek, the movie that came out 10 years ago.
But if you were CBS or Viacom at that point, wouldn't you prefer that Tarantino use the CBS All Access characters?
No, I prefer Tarantino to do whatever he wants and make something good. And I think in the movie-going audience, there's still a lot of love for that Kelvin universe. There may not be so much in the
If there was
hardcore,
then why don't they make more?
because that's the one that they had planned is off the table because of contractual problems, because of talent, because of negotiations, because of boring business stuff, money, right, being the problem. And the movies have admittedly made less money over time, made less money than New Darkness, made less money than, or not as much as they'd hoped after the success of 2009. Yeah, so I think tie that up, wrap it up, give those last actors that we love, from Chris Pine playing Kirk to Carl Urban playing McCoy, give them one last hurrah, let them do something fun with it, get Simon Pegg involved, let Tarantino do his thing. I think that would be an amazing way to end that journey of that reboot, and then really go all in on the Discovery and the Picard stuff.
Do you imagine Tarantino's Star Trek being PG-13?
No, R.
Yeah, that's the only way I imagine it.
I think you could get away with. I mean, it's not about swearing, it's about the scenarios he's going to put them in.
So yes or no? R or PG-13?
I think it'd be PG-13.
You do?
Yeah.
You think he's got it in him to do a PG-13 film?
Yes.
Great.
I don't think what defines a Tarantino movie is the swears. or the violence.
Well, no, it's that Tarantino directed it, and you let him do what he wants to
It's-
do, as you said.
It's
and
the dialogue that drives.
The only thing that you've ever seen him do incorporates like mass
But
amounts of
some of
violence.
the best scenes in Tarantino films are even PG level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what he would bring.
A Royale with cheese.
I think
Exactly.
he's bringing a lot of leverage to the table, and he'll demand creative control.
It being
And
R
that'll
just
mean
changes
R.
the scope of the budget, right? If they know they're making an R-rated film, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably his most successful opening in terms of box office, and that was not a massive box office compared to it's made 109 million.
Well, his budgets aren't sky high either, though.
But when you're talking about making a Star Trek story,
They
the
are.
budgets are sky high.
Yeah.
So if he was doing an R-rated film, they would have to scale that back. You'd have to basically be the Tarantino bottle episode. You know, cheaper sets, more talky, less crazy.
Well, yeah,
action.
like Deadpool did a Marvel film on half the budget initially.
that was a special case.
Okay.
Because that was Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool, also running the effects company and doing it probably
Oh.
on the cheap.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And wanting and you know being in the family for that.
We should talk more about Star Trek sets because there's a story that came out this week.
Nice segue, Kishore. I wanted to share this. This popped up on Reddit. Forgotten Trek is the website, and they have a post about the unseen Enterprise D.
Yeah.
This is pure nerdery, but they want to explore what it would look. Where are the parts of the ship that the sets never got built that are mentioned in episodes, mentioned in technical manuals, and for the Enterprise D specifically, Galaxy class ship, something that was open for families, had the big saucer section design. Where were these places and what did they look like? For example, did you know, Jeremy, that the shuttle bay that we see
The answer is no.
is never the main shuttle bay?
I only knew that because I read this article. I had no idea.
Yeah.
What they have a bigger shuttle bay that never is seen
Because
in
there was
TNG
never
ever.
there were no sets for it built. It's a 2-level design.
Well, what's the point then? Like, did they refer to it?
The point is that they needed to have that in the design of the ship because
why?
in the fiction of building out the geography of the layout of the ship,
Yeah.
when you have the acutograms, when you have the technical manual,
Right.
there needs to be a spot. If that's the shuttle, if a ship holds 1,000 people and was the size of the Paramount lot, the shuttle bay is here. We made it that big. Well, that's a lot bigger than what we have room to build a set for. Okay,
Right.
then what we have on the show is the secondary shuttle bay.
Got it. That's different than the constraints being what works for the story.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's some parts for what works for the story. For example, there are whales and dolphins aboard the Enterprise D.
Shut up.
I will not.
Like a voyage home?
Just like and they are used, I think, in canon for navigational purposes.
What?
If not for communicating with. So there's a whole aquarium, a cetacean ops that's mentioned in, I think, what did they say in this episode?
Yesterday's Enterprise and the Perfect Mate, it was mentioned.
Yeah.
What do they mention? Let's go check out the whales and see what they say. This is what
Dolphins and
don't
2
remember.
whales, and in the blueprints, it is placed on decks 13 and 14 in the forward section.
Ugh.
And so this story is great because they interview some of the people who worked on the production design, who wrote the technical manuals, and also some people who have done some previs and have kind of drawn up sketches, concept art about what, for example, I got to blow that up. Exactly. Here's what a lounge would look like with the
The
dolphins.
Cetacean Ops artwork.
Yeah. We'll put this link. It's on ForgottenTrek.com. There's a whole medical deck. One of the things I love is there's more than 10 forward. You know the etymology of 10 forward.
10th deck,
There's the
most forward part of the ship.
I wanted to quiz Jeremy on that, but yes,
Yeah, he would.
No, I
got
knew
it.
that.
He would get
I knew
it.
that. That's not. Yeah. I did know that.
it is the most forward part of the ship, so it's the best observation lounge, as opposed, in addition to being just a relaxation lounge.
Yeah.
Because the saucer section is made of 20 decks, and 10 is right in the middle, so you get the right to the front. But there are, beneath and above, on decks 9 and 11, there are other lounges, smaller lounges. They imagined, a ship of this class and this size to have places where people can relax and look out the windows, because not necessarily everyone's going to get,
Yeah.
The cruise ship with the galaxy view.
So somebody made renders based on technical drawings.
render sketches. There were some references to there was that C Indeed VR Enterprise D.
Yeah.
That got shut down.
Yeah.
And so they have screenshots of that. But
Got
it's
it.
really an exploration of the the build out of a ship.
If you ever saw Galaxy Quest,
I was just about to
and
say.
saw the Justin Long character going through the blueprints,
Yes.
that's what this is.
Yeah.
Boy, this really makes me want to see a remake of TNG, like a new series
Oh,
on the Enterprise.
like featuring the captain, maybe?
well, that'd be nice.
This is what's different about both Picard and Discovery, right? Discovery, and not just by being serialized shows that are trying to tell one big story across a season, which is all fine dandy, I like, but the episodic structure of Star Trek allowed the environment of the ship to be the main setting. It wasn't always about going from place to place to place. The ship would do that, but allowed for you to live in the ship. You would get scenes in people's crew quarters, walking down hallways, chatting in 10 forward, going to the med bay, and it allowed the viewers to really imagine, even though we were only seeing those dozen or so locations.
Took it for granted.
You imagine, your head fills in
Yeah.
what that whole Galaxy class ship.
The intro paragraph in this article says that engineering was even designed for Encounter at Farpoint for just kind of superfluous reasons, because Gene Roddenberry knew that he wanted it later.
And they wouldn't have the budget, and
Yeah,
you would get
exactly.
the most money up front to
Yeah.
build that. Yeah, and I think that Orville does it well when building and using sets and building sets, but we don't have a show like this where it's basically the cruise ship design. A lot of the more realistic science fiction shows, their ships are more Firefly class.
Smaller.
They're small, more submarine
Yeah.
style, and which that makes a lot more sense logically, but it's less fantasy. It's less the utopia sci-fi that we got and we love from TNG.
Good stuff.
Okay, from Star Trek, we're going to Star Wars, and I will let you guys know that I won't be in next week, unfortunately. Can't say exactly why, but one of the things I'll be doing toward the end of next week for my birthday is I'll be going to Anaheim for
Wars.
Disneyland. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to go to Galaxy's Edge. I'm going to try.
What kind of sentence is that? Of course you're going to Galaxy's Edge.
I'm taking the family. There may be just time restrictions.
What?
I might be.
But
only-
you're going to be in Disneyland.
I'm gonna be in Anaheim. I might be only going to California Adventure.
Ah.
There's some blackout dates because D23 is that weekend as well, and
I
so
see.
expected to be very, very crowded.
Oh, my.
With a lot of Disney fans. So the second best thing I have to going to Galaxy's Edge, and maybe there'll be some other opportunity in the future for us to go, is Disney is going to put out a freeform special behind the scenes, the making of Galaxy's Edge. Adventure awaits at the end of September 29th. Neil Patrick Harris is hosting.
Is he singing?
I don't think he's singing. Celebrity guests, including Keegan-Michael Key, Jay Leno, Miles Brown, Kelly Cuoco from Big Bang Theory, and it's a tour of the land.
Look, I love the Millennium Falcon. I love NPH. Really love Keegan-Michael Key.
What's it? Neil Patrick Harris got it.
I don't want any part of this. This is basically should be called Spoiler Cast.
No, it's not a.
This is a spoiler cast of their ride.
They're not going to. This is officially sanctioned by Disney.
Not
it's a
Disney.
commercial. It's a half-hour commercial.
Exactly. But this is still not something you want any part of, really.
This is what I grew up.
Oh,
with.
this is going to be just oozing of look how wonderful this is from the outside.
Did you never watch that as a kid?
What you really want is like the Adam Savage behind the scenes
Oh.
tour. Like, how did you make this stuff? And they're not going to tell you
They're not-
one thing about how anything works.
This is the closest we're going to get. And yeah, the tested behind the scenes tour is something we'd love to do and are working on trying to do. But this brings back my memories as a kid watching those TV specials on ABC, The Wonderful World of Disney stuff, where Eisner or where they would basically sell you on the parks, and I had it filled up my imagination watching these commercials, these infomercials
For what?
for Disneyland, for
Yeah.
the movies, for all the stuff they were promoting
Yeah.
back then.
Okay.
I'm in on it.
Is it a D23 thing? Is that why they're doing it?
No, D23 is end of August, and this is going to be maybe filmed around that time, but it'll be released end of September. Yeah, on Freeform. A few bits more of TV news. Dark Crystal 2 comes out in 2 weeks' time, August 30th. We have a little bit of a new trailer, I guess.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I blacked out there for a second. This was epic. Have you both watched this?
Well, yeah, but you've seen the other trailers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought
stopped
this
watching the
trailer,
trailer.
looked unbelievable. It
Really?
looks so good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one real weird thing.
Okay.
They have real world puppets that really can't move their mouths.
Yeah.
In incredible CG landscapes
Right.
with like incredible effects surrounding them.
Yes.
So you notice like how these puppets aren't really like, fitting in the landscape, but it looks so beautiful and the
Yeah.
voice acting is so on point.
I'm with you.
And I watched The Dark Crystal. I don't think I remembered that this is the actual story of The Dark Crystal, and they've like kind of iterated on it in a fun
It's
way.
a continuation.
Yeah, but the villains feel more villainous, like more scary than I
Skeksis.
remember.
Oh, I remember being terrified by them, and I watched it recently, and they're still quite scary. But I want to know how people feel about that CG mixed with live action puppetry. I mean, and I'm not against it. I'm just saying that it's like back in the day when they made the Dark Crystal. Of course, there was no CG whatsoever, and I imagine Jim Henson would have used it appropriately if he had access to that.
Yeah.
But we don't know. And so if you're going to honor that aesthetic, there's going to be some people who are just like, "Oh, that doesn't work."
Any
for me.
CG. Dude, there's CG and stuff all the time that people don't realize.
And I wonder if maybe that's where the line could have been drawn. I don't know. This is just an open-ended question.
They would rather the expanses of the landscape look shittier.
No, but we're not talking about simply backgrounds. We're talking about effects coming, like swirling around characters. I think there's some CG camera movements.
But there were CG. I mean, they're not CG, but there were effects for those old shows as well. They just look crappier.
Absolutely.
The composited effects.
Well, the puppets look crappier. They could have done those in CG, and they didn't.
They didn't. Yes,
No,
because the
these are all
character. I think
practical.
they know character is the most important thing, and they're going to get the best representation of those characters with puppets.
I think
with
there's
physical detail.
I think there's definitely a respect and nostalgia factor there for the going with the practical puppets.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what that's like. And
It's-
I want to know from a production standpoint. I'd love to know how they decided to draw that line, because I know it wasn't do CG wherever you want. I think there must have been an interesting discussion there.
I think there's also, it's all matter of budgets, right? Like there's a creative angle for this, and there's a Netflix saying how much money do we want to spend on this?
Sure.
Because you had like the Thunderbirds reboot, and that was real practical environments, heavy costs for
Yeah.
these giant bigatures that What a Workshop put together. But the character was CG because they were doing an ongoing show, and it was just way more expensive to do puppets that way than it would be to do CG characters, but they had the compromise of the actual environments and the ships being a real location, and that was the mix. And it was received really well. I mean, it's how you got story drives the whole thing. I don't think you can like poo-poo the show if they use CG elements beyond to your liking if the story's great and if it's still Dark Crystal.
I don't know. Even if it's weird, I'm excited about the prospect of an experiment like this.
Me too.
I mean, because we don't see stuff like this.
No. And I'm just glad that, Dark Crystal's back in the public conscience, because it's a really interesting little chapter in Jim Henson history.
It's a question of whether there will be a season 2, whether they, like Netflix is known to have spent a ton of money on content, but they've been canceling shows left and right. And the story is the big argument from network television is that they will stick with you and give and work with creators to promote the shows and get 7 seasons of a show. For Netflix, it's if you don't do well, if numbers aren't there, you're not going to get a 3rd season or a 4th season. And for a lot of storytellers, who want to do long form storytelling, 20 episodes isn't enough, or 16 episodes.
It probably is going to get harder and harder for people on the Netflix platform because of their subscriber base taking a dive for the first time.
Yeah, there was a whole story that came out about one Netflix show, which was a syndicated show. They didn't originally produce it, but where the showrunners gamed, or as one story, but hacked their way into getting into the recommended rotation. And there was no hack. It was basically, it was the comedy Viking show. I forget the Norse comedic take on Viking culture. But basically they bought Facebook ads themselves, and they had to pay their own money to market the show on social media and Facebook to get interest on it to a point where people were tuning in. And then it getting popular that way allowed it then to really surge up to the front page of Netflix.
That's not hacking.
It's not hacking.
That's
It's just-
called advertising.
Exactly. And the hack, I guess, isn't really a hack. It's the fact that the showrunners, the creators also had to do that themselves.
Right, like
And
like
Netflix.
like a YouTuber.
Yes, Netflix wasn't going to do that for them because just because you're on Netflix doesn't mean you're going to get that promotion.
I think the same is true for a lot of network shows now. Like, even though they're paying budget for this, they're still asking the actors to really push out stuff to the audiences they've developed elsewhere. I mean, you see that with like Andy Samberg on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like, most of the people that are probably hanging out following Andy Samberg are coming from, his years of work on SNL and other things. I don't know why I picked that as my example.
A little bit of story. I'm going to switch the conversation over to Barbie.
Oh, good. I knew Barbie's lawyer.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this one of the toys that made us?
No. I knew a guy who used to be a lawyer who handled Barbie for Mattel. Was it Mattel? I think
It's Mattel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barbie's done some pretty good stuff these past couple of years. They had a really great 50th anniversary Star Trek collection with a wonderful Uhura and even a Spock. They're wonderful designs. They've had collaborations with the ESA, European Space Agency, in which they've created these one-offs of their astronauts with a great EMU suit. And I think earlier this year they put like a David Bowie Ziggy Stardust Barbie that looked incredible. I don't know if you've seen that. It looked really good.
Wait, this is Barbie though.
This is Barbie.
Okay.
Google it.
Okay.
Google Ziggy Stardust Barbie.
Right away,
and
sir.
You might be impressed.
These new Barbies
So
look good.
They have this new line of Star Wars Barbies. Now, don't poo-poo this just because I'm
with you.
They're Star Wars, but it's basically fashion takes. You know what it reminds me of, Kishore? It makes me think of the Her Universe costume contest and the costume fashion show they had at New York or at San Diego Comic-Con, and these new Barbies, new collection, which is, I think, 3 characters, one inspired by Leia, one inspired by Vader.
The Vader one's very Devil Wears
And
Prada.
one inspired by R2D2.
R2 is very Bowie inspired, it seems like to me.
Oh,
That's
crazy.
an incredible design.
Blue hair.
If you saw any cosplayer dressing up, I think it's great inspiration for
I would stop
for a
them and take
cosplayer.
a picture.
Absolutely. That's a
With
awesome
permission.
take.
Of course.
Of course. But like the Leia, the hair, that dress, like this is really cool.
The Leia is the only one that really looks like cosplay. The other ones look like crossovers, right? I mean,
Like mashups, you
Yeah,
mean?
mashups. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Leia one looks like exactly cosplay. She never had like a dress
Right.
that big.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are like the Barbie takes
Yes,
on
and,
these.
and Vader didn't technically wear sunglasses. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but
I like that they're doing it. I think it's a really, really cool take on it. And
Are you going to buy some Barbies?
these are $100 each, so probably not.
That does not answer the question.
No, I'm not going to buy any of these. At least, we'll see. We'll see if they go up in value. I did pick up the Ziggy Stardust one because I think that one is.
Did you?
Yeah, that one's super cool.
It does look cool.
Yeah, really cool. I'm going to put another piece of news. Lego news. I'm just adding stuff left and right to pop culture.
Yeah.
New Lego set, Disneyland. It's a new Disney Railroad Lego set.
What? Like the railroad that goes around the park?
Yes, motorized train.
No kidding.
Let me put this in our show notes. So
do I need this?
You don't need to show it. But if you're a fan of trains, it's part of their Lego powered up line of sets, which has the motors and the sensors. It does have Mickey and Minnie and Chip and Dale and Goofy, and it's paying tribute to Walt Disney's love of trains and model trains.
Really quickly on the toy front, we saw the Unicron model that Hasbro Labs is quote unquote crowdfunding, and it is dangerously on the precipice of not making its funding goal. It was like, I checked this morning, I think it was only 30% funded with 2 weeks to go. And it's like they can't put that much development time into a Unicron that weighs that much, that is that intricate, and not make this, right?
They can. I mean, it's a really good question. They might do this is like forcing Hasbro's hand, right? Hasbro's a big company. They have money. Tooling is expensive. Presumably, some of the tooling is already made because they have prototypes of this stuff. These aren't 3D printed prototypes. They look like injection molded prototypes. So what really is the point of these crowdfunded support campaigns?
They're making like a high-end collectible market, I think, is what they're doing.
Because their goal for this was 8,000. They
Which
need to
doesn't
sell.
sound that much.
Well, it's also $575.
Oh, it's totally an expensive toy.
very expensive.
But if their goal is 8,000 units, right?
That does sound like a lot.
Yeah.
How
maybe
many?
you're right.
8,000 people? Like when you're talking about in the
Yeah.
high-end collectors market, we talk about things like sideshow collectibles and people spending like up $500 to $700 on a statue. A lot of those are in the 500 or 1,000 unit range.
Yeah.
8,000 is a ton. So the question is, in terms of the stages of development, where are they? Why do they need? Because they have the 3D models. It's all on their page, right? It's the design is done. It really is manufacturing. Okay, and I take it back. It does look like they did 3D print prototypes, and a one-of-a-kind master model was created. So what we saw at Comic-Con might have been just the one-off master. Tooling might not have been created. It's a lot of parts. The tooling, when we say tooling, is the paying to machine the molds that the plastic will go in. And anyone working in toys, even small toys, require every single piece, every single limb, every single joint requires its own tool. And to make those tools are in tens of thousands of dollars to make those, to manufacture those. So maybe that's what they need. But I got to believe that their break even for tooling is under 8,000. There may be a point where, I'm just throwing a number out there. If they get 5,000 people to commit, because once you're signing up, you put your credit card in, you check the box as you agree to pay. So maybe there is a point below their goal where they won't make as much money, but where it'll still be worth it to manufacture 5,000 of these. And honestly, do those people really care if the box isn't as good, right? Maybe some money in the packaging goes away, right? Maybe it's a more of a white box model. I don't know. The other HasLab thing I want to give a shout out to, because this probably also will not make it into a product, is the Cookie Monster. Did you see this?
No.
I want this more than I think I want the Unicron. $300. They need 3,000 people to get in on it, and only about 460 people have it. You have 10 days left by the time you're listening to this podcast. But this is
What an adorable looking Cookie Monster.
it is a full armatured puppet. You can pose it.
Oh.
This is the closest with the real fleece.
So it's not a Muppet. Like, you don't use it to perform.
No.
You're saying it's a posable.
It's a posable replica.
Jeremy, there's only one Cookie Monster. This is clearly a replica.
It's for Cookie. It's good enough for me.
38 inches tall, the largest Sesame Street item that would be created if they get it to manufacturing. So you can pose it. Googly eyes.
That's great.
The perfect plush.
Except for the price.
I love under the Y Cookie Monster. It's their last reason is because C is for Cookie is an anthem for our collective childhood. That is a great line.
My 12-year-old posed the question to me and my daughter yesterday. What would you choose if you could have a complete collection of anything in the world?
That's
G.I.
a
Joe.
great question.
But you
Hold on.
You couldn't sell it. You couldn't sell any of them. It couldn't be like a profit motive.
I love this question.
And-
Also, as a tangent, I think we should start soliciting these kind of questions from our audience.
And
Sure.
my 9-year-old daughter responded without much thought, but she was like, she would never have said anything else. Plushies.
Wait. Plushies?
Yeah,
like,
stuffed animals.
but there's no limit to...
Of course there is. There's a certain number of stuffed animals, and you only get one of each, but still that's going to be a lot of stuffed animals. And I said, could we possibly fit one of every stuffed animal in the world in our house, floor to ceiling?
Oh, this is a Google. If she can answer this question, she'll get hired to Google.
And that would be a billboard, right? Like, get hired if you can answer this. And she said, no, of course not. No, we couldn't fill our house. She said we would need more space. Like,
Yeah.
we would need more than that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what she's going to do with all these stuff.
Well, also the question is, do you compress it? Is it vacuum sealed plushies? Like where all the volume?
I
or are you
think she'd
talking
like
about?
to enjoy the plushies.
Okay.
And-
So you're even talking about just display space and wall space. You're not even doing the math of the volume of the house.
Anyway,
Surface area.
she got like this in her mind when we went from lunch to Dave & Buster's, because it's like their last free day of the summer.
Sure.
She won a stuffed animal. And as we're walking out, she said, I'm one closer.
To every plushie in the world.
Every plushie. Yeah.
That's danger talk right there.
Wow.
Give me
Okay.
all the GI Joes, no hesitation. I want all the GI Joes. I want the aircraft carrier. I want the planes. I get all of Cobra too.
Of course.
Yeah. So give me a Rattler flying in.
That's a reasonable
I want
thing.
the whole space shuttle thing. You know why I want those? Because I'll play with those.
I mean, how broad? The question should be narrow. Defining terms, right? You're talking about literally a category, a type of
Are you
product.
making this fun question not fun?
I'm making it more fun. I'm turning it into a podcast.
You're going to be like, coins.
right? You can't say like I want all the gold in the world,
All the bitcoins.
all the Bitcoin, or all. You can't like.
But you can't sell them.
That's true. That's true. But I think the question should be narrowed to like a collectible,
Yes.
either brand or something that was a set, right? Where there
Sure.
is a limited number that was actually produced in this
Well, I think that's the spirit of the question.
Yeah.
My son, for what it's worth, said magic cards.
Magic card. I knew it.
And I asked him, I said, if you had every magic card,
Yeah.
would you be able to win any game? Like, you know,
Ooh,
because
is Magic solved?
you could set
Is
your
basically
deck.
you're saying.
Right, exactly. He said, no, bro. He said, no way.
He has to work with some AI programs
Yeah.
and solve Magic,
Yeah.
right? DeepMind, Magic, The Gathering.
Now that they've done Go.
Has he listened to you should introduce him. There's a podcast that is about the creation of fantasy world. I forgot the name. It was recommended. It was syndicated on 99% Invisible. But it's about the one of the episodes was about Magic the Gathering. The host learns Magic the Gathering, but in interviews designers of Magic at Wizards of the Coast, including one of their lead designer who's been doing it for years, and they talk about why Magic is so popular. And they actually talk the anatomy of the card itself, the art, the flourish in the language, which they have a lot of fun writing, the attributes. But one of the big takeaways, and I don't want to diminish from the episode because it's a wonderful episode, is Magic is fun because unlike fantasy, where there's clear good and evil. If you think of Lord of the Rings, if you think of any traditional fantasy story, there's clear good and clear evil. There isn't in Magic. There are different ways you use the powers of fire and the different colors, right? The color wheel that they have, but none of that is explicitly good or evil. It's more just personality. It's more the personality.
So I hard disagree because anyone that plays a blue and white deck are just plain evil. Those people are the worst. Come at me.
I'm gonna look for the name of the podcast. Gathering the Magic is the name of the episode. Imaginary Worlds is the podcast, and the podcast is also great because it's about
It's a finite series.
no
shows?
It's an ongoing
Oh, wow.
shows, but it's a bi-weekly podcast about science fiction and fantasy genres.
Oh, okay. It's not all
And-
about magic.
No. The one episode was
Gotcha.
about magic, and the episode is called Gathering the Magic. But you should listen to it with your son. What would your thing be, Jeremy?
Williams.matrix display games, DMDs. So that's, I at first I thought pinball machines, right? But what are you going to do with that?
First of all, golf clap for that answer. Very
Like-
specific.
Like, you can't store that many games. You need a warehouse. I don't want that problem.
Oh, you're thinking of legit. You're making a fun question, not fun. But think about the logistics of storage. No, you have a magic hat. You have a magic door to the closet.
No.
that you open, and then when you go through, you have everything of this one collection
right.
to
But
enjoy.
Norm
and
has
not
like a
sell.
Narnia he goes to for his
Yeah,
stuff.
those are the terms of this contest or this question.
I thought maybe pinball, and then what I was going to do if that's the case, if I have Narnia, then I'm going to invite the internet to come and take the leftovers because I'm probably only going to take 20 games.
You can't give it away.
Yeah, of course you can. You can't sell them.
Again, the goodwill you had from giving it away is in effect gain.
Well, let
For
me
you.
let me reverse this a little bit. Would you ever want to have like a pinball store or museum where people could come in and play them all?
I would love to, but then you have a maintenance and a storage and
Yeah,
a rent
fair.
problem, and I
Fair.
don't want any of that. I just want a few games in my house.
Fair.
So I'm doing Williams DMD games, and I'm probably not even able to store all of those because that's probably 60 games right there. But that's my answer. You have not said.
Marvel comic books.
Okay. Yeah. All Marvel comic books, like from the beginning to current.
Yep.
That's a lot of space right there.
Are you
too.
going to read them or are you just going to?
Oh, of course. I
Okay.
can't sell them.
No, but some people love just keeping them in.
Yeah. In the shrink wrap.
In the
Whatever.
collectible case,
Yeah,
the
collectibles.
rated case. No, it's okay.
You gonna read them?
They're meant to be read.
What is
Comic books are meant to be read.
I mean, I know you can't sell them, but is there a Superman issue 1 from the Marvel universe kind of equivalent. That's
there's
famously expensive and hard to
Fantastic
find.
Four 1 is probably up there.
early Spider-Man.
Early Spider-Man 1. Amazing story. Amazing Fantasy.
Yeah, Amazing Fantasy.
Highly
That's right.
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Him swinging through, holding the guy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we're a little past that now. I mean, there's certainly a market for that, but I think that, I just want these comics to be enjoyed. I just want people to read them.
That's nice. I mean, you should open a library then. And let everyone come enjoy your Marvel collection.
Into my Narnia.
Yes.
Excuse me. That's a lot of people in the
I kind of agree.
bedroom.
I don't want people touching my GI Joes either. Gross.
Well, you guys can come to my pinball museum.
All right, I'll bring some comics.
Are we done here?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, great.
Hey, before we continue with technology news, I want to let you know that support for This Is Only a Test this week also comes from Indeed. If you're looking for your next tech gig, it's time to flip the job search script with Indeed Prime. On Indeed Prime, top tech companies apply to you with jobs you'll love. Stop living for the weekend and start doing what you love with Indeed Prime. All you have to do is fill out one free application, and Indeed Prime takes care of the rest, putting tech talent in front of thousands of companies like PayPal, Twilio, WP Engine across more than 90 cities. It's that simple. They'll match you with the right role based on your skills, experience, and goals, and you won't spend any more time sending resume after resume. Companies apply to you, not the other way around. Plus, every Prime candidate gets free one-to-one live access to technical coaching, resume reviews, mock interviews, and even salary negotiation tips to seal the deal. So whether you're hiring or looking, meet your match on Indeed Prime. If you go to indeedprime.com/test, you'll find out more. Again, join now at indeedprime.com/test. All right, on to the tech news. This is a piece of technology. Well, it's a piece of tech news that applies to a lot of our maybe consumer culture, but it has to do with shipping.
Yeah, we got news this week that FedEx has essentially dropped Amazon as a client. And this is because Amazon's been shifting most of their deliveries, and I think this is US only, to their own carrier, to their cell phone carrier. My recent Amazon purchases have all come through the Amazon delivery service. And I gotta say, I'm not entirely thrilled about it. My experience of it, I'm sure they have a rough gig, but like packages left without like doorbells being rang, that kind of stuff.
And that's all the last mile stuff,
Yeah.
right? That they can crew up logistically. But what does that mean for the first 100 miles? And getting from the facilities over to the local distribution centers, like I think it's a big, strong move from FedEx, and hopefully they can survive it because I'm sure Amazon is a big source of income for them. But I don't want to see a world where FedEx is no longer around because of Amazon.
Well, I think all the Amazon competitors are still using FedEx, and if shipping is on the rise as a whole, I don't think FedEx is in trouble from that in the long term if this trend continues. And I just don't know how it's an interesting move to see how this experience goes with Amazon switching to in-house logistics.
How does Amazon save money by dropping How does FedEx save money by dropping Amazon as a client?
Well, it's already on the decline because Amazon is shifting stuff to in-house anyways.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying like this is already sort of an account that's going away slowly. So we're going to shift our business and prioritize other clients.
Yeah.
Because they probably offered Amazon a deal. There's
I'm sure.
negotiations for the cost. And we talked
Sure.
about this before about, that even not just the last mile, the whole shipping ecosystem is probably the most underappreciated and underpaid part of modern consumerism. Your delivery person and all the extra work they have to do, not just, on the day-to-day, but holidays, when new products are launched. Like, we've seen those videos of the UPS factories when a new iPhone release day, right? And just because there's space in the back of the van doesn't mean it should be all filled up. And it's a lot of work. I stop by the UPS store to make deliveries, and I see the the truck drivers like loading, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of stuff that I presume a lot of that stuff are just returns because of lax return policies, things we take for granted and assume that free shipping is a part of it. So it really is a plea to get to know the people who are making these deliveries and who are on your routes, and maybe they'll give you a heads up when things are coming.
The one thing I've noticed is like the FedEx person that comes to my house, I know that person. Yep. It's the same person. With Amazon, it hasn't been that way.
Right.
It's a different person every time, and I don't know if that'll change, but it kind of makes what you're talking about harder when it's not the same person.
Yeah. So on to something a little more lighthearted. This is a video that came out actually late last year. There is a communications company called Voisys. I want to say Voysys.
That works.
And I believe they make software for teleoperation, whether that's through flat screen, VR, or other things, basically controlling robots or vehicles remotely for some type of operation purposes. And one of the demos and experiments they did is creating a virtual a way to control a car miles away.
I want to make this
using a what do you call this? Like a half dome projector system?
Yeah, it looks like an old school flight simulator projector. So it feels like you're enclosed in this space, but it's really just a 2-dimensional projector that fills your peripheral vision.
It's like 180, it seems.
Yeah.
So if you watch the video, it's on YouTube on the Voisys website. Basically, they have an RC car. They put essentially, like you said, an RC transmitter camera, like a FPV camera on there, and tied it into their system and had remote control using steering wheel and this kind of half dome projection system to drive that car remotely on a course on the ground and do it effectively.
I wonder. I don't think they did do an RF cam. I think that's all tied in. So
it's all digital.
Probably just a wired cam that's plugged into their system.
It looks wired.
And so their tech might be encoding low latency compression
and then they're transmitting directly from that car.
I mean, what's crazy is the latency, I think they said on this, is only a few hundred milliseconds, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's the critical part of this is like you can't do this if your latency is upwards of a second. Right?
They said it's 300 milliseconds total, including steering input. So there's going to be latency involved even in his like PC setup to do the controls on that side. But 300 milliseconds, he certainly could drive in what seemed like it was 1 to 5 scale size as well as speed. So I think they slowed the car down.
I think they also make this dome player, they call it the Odin dome player. And one of their things they want to tout is the advantages of this type of, all-encompassing projection system over a VR system, whereas VR probably is cheaper and more readily available for consumers and people who might play racing games, and other sims love VR. They feel like the benefits of having peripheral vision and being able to encompass almost essentially a lot of your field of view with this is better than something that's a little more tunnel vision.
There's also something cool about it being connected to some real world thing, even though you're not there.
Yeah.
Like, how much do you want to see a Mario Kart version of this?
Totally.
Like 1,000%, right?
The first video that got shared around with this, they were testing this in their office. So the car was driving around in the same apartment or whatever office that the person driving the car was, and it was basically tiny racers running around from that skewed perspective of the world.
Yep,
Love it.
It's fun. I don't know if it necessarily needs 5G though. Or this was LTE.
This is just LTE.
Okay, I thought you linked to a 5G story. All right, that makes more sense.
In terms of other VR, and this is our next story is more about user interface as well. The U.S. Navy had done a study.
Yeah.
And the report from the National Transportation Safety Board said that the operations were less effective when touchscreens were used than when tactile keys were used because of the complex throttle systems and controls.
And they it's more damning than that. They kind of point to there's a couple accidents in the past few years that they don't 100% blame on touchscreens, but they said it participated in it, and in both of those accidents, sailors were killed. And these were destroyer level ships.
Collisions.
that got into accidents. So these are big, expensive ships.
Yeah, in one circumstance, I think that whoever was the captain or piloting the ship transferred the controls accidentally to a different terminal.
Oh.
And didn't mean to. And the system was running in a mode that allowed it to happen. And
So the question is this a design problem or is this a fundamental problem with touchscreens versus tactile buttons? A muscle memory problem.
This is one of those places where it has to work like 100%, 100.0000% of the time because of the vehicles we're talking about.
The assumption that we have with UI going forward, whether it's in cars and Tesla cars and even a lot of the interfaces in other cars, and also in the science fiction that we see, is that touchscreen is the future because it's versatile.
Right.
One screen allows for
multiple languages, flexibility for redesigns.
Yep, and input is more granular because you have pressure support, you have zoom, you have all these gestures that you and actions that you cannot do with physical buttons. But the benefits of physical buttons that it is binary in the case. It's discrete. You know exactly how many buttons there are, what buttons you're pushing, and your muscle memory will work to that effect.
We also have a better grasp at failure rate for those components. Like I can just imagine if a touchscreen reboots, like while they're piloting like a Navy destroyer, that's like, that's non-trivial.
You said it has to work 100% of the time, and I would say that it doesn't appear that there was a malfunction. It appears that there was a lack of training or understanding about how the system works. And I'm sure that the UI designer would say it does work all the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's a weird argument. Like I certainly, coming at it from a car standpoint, I love tactile controls. I want to be able to reach out and feel things, but that's not for the same reasons as what this article is about. It's more about keeping my eyes on the road and not wanting to read anything.
And there are certain things that where you tactile control, the analog control is important. Right, the steering wheel is something I don't think we're going to see ever replaced if you're doing manual driving with a slider, right, or a virtual steering wheel. Something you're just using your finger, having the force feedback, having that immediacy is important. Even in Star Trek, even in science fiction. Remember in Insurrection, Nemesis, maybe it was Nemesis.
Daddy brain.
Where Riker pulled up the joystick on the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
What?
Right?
No, what happened?
Seatbelts.
Oh, yeah.
And a joystick thing
Not
popped up on
good.
the console, and he used the joystick to manually steer the Enterprise.
Why?
I mean, it was like a half step away from WASDing it into dock.
Why did he have to do that? The touchscreen broke?
No, it was clearly like somebody made a choice like, this will look cool.
Okay.
But from a story perspective, I think it was just the precision of it.
Oh.
And he's an amazing pilot, remember?
That's right. Even you never saw Voyager, but the Delta Flyer, Tom Paris designed it to have tactile controls.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
It's just what our physiology works with best. Okay, on to some product stuff. I want to give people a shout out to this new Nintendo Switch accessory. It's called the...
It's not just like an accessory. It's like an important functionality because like the Switch dock kind of stinks.
Okay.
And this like unifies it.
So let's explain what it is.
It's the Genki Covert Dock and replaces the Switch charger and TV dock. It's one of the few things that also gives you the HDMI output as well as the charging USB-C charger.
So apparently, and I didn't even know this because I've never tried it, but the Nintendo Switch cannot hook directly to an HDMI or a USB-C to HDMI converter, like any standard thing off the shelf, and connect with TV. The official Nintendo dock does some magic to allow that to happen.
Yep.
And when it was released, I guess some third-party manufacturers figured out whatever they're doing, and this is one of the things that basically replaces it, but in the size of a small puck charger.
Yes. So it's less of a dock that you put the Switch in, but it's a puck charger, but it's like your Chromecast version where you have an HDMI port and you can plug that cable into the TV.
Did you watch the Kickstarter for this?
No.
Because it's a little funny. Like you remember the original Switch commercial when they showed a bunch of people like taking the Switch to parties and the guy took his dog like to a dog park and played the Switch instead of playing with his dog. And it's sort of that. There's these group of people that go to a bar, a hangout spot, presumably, and there's probably 10 of them there, and 2 of them are playing Switch, and one guy says, "Hey, did you bring your dock so we can hook it up to the bar TV?" And the guy says, he's like, feels small, you could tell he's embarrassed, and he says, "No, I didn't bring my dock." And everybody says, oh, like he's made this huge party foul.
There's got to be a better way.
Everybody's upset. And then, lo and behold, one of the other party guests says, don't worry, guys, I brought this.
I brought the Genki Covert Dock, plugging it in,
And then-
HDMI me, USB-C.
Exactly. And then the whole party's playing Towerfall, which is actually awesome. I'm glad they chose that game on the bar TV, and they're having a blast. And it just felt like I've never, like, fine, I'm out of touch. I don't go to that many parties. I go to even fewer bars, but I don't imagine this is a common scenario. Yeah. Nonetheless, they're shooting for $50,000 on their Kickstarter, and they must have $800,000 by now.
They do.
Oh my
they have
goodness.
over 800. They reached their full funding in 40 minutes. It's a #1 gaming hardware Kickstarter
So
this year.
clearly, this is a neat case.
$50. You know, all it takes is a firmware update for Nintendo to disable the HDMI functionality. And speaking of which, if you're in the market for a new Switch, because remember, the Nintendo not only has the smaller Switch coming out, the one without the removable controllers, but also they did a stealth update with increased battery life of the Switch. I think GameStop has a trade-in for your first generation Switch, where if you do the math, basically you could trade in your Switch.
What do you mean first generation Switch?
You know, the Switch that's not the internal upgrade.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Right. So like the one we all have essentially. You can sell it to GameStop, and then you can buy for $75 less. So which is not a bad depreciation actually, and then which lets you then buy a new Switch for $75 essentially for increased battery life. If that's a way you want to go, of course you have to go through all the porting of the saves and everything, and that's kind of a headache on the Nintendo side.
Oh, you don't mean the new Switch without the detachable controls?
No, I mean it's the
they remade the Switch, but it now has better battery.
yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, maybe you were gone that week when we talked about
That's
the
great.
podcast. Yeah, you have to look for specific model numbers. They're phasing out production of the old ones, but
Gotcha.
You can Google it, and there will be. If you look at the box, there will have a different model number, serial number.
Is it like double?
battery life?
Yeah.
No, it's not that. No, it's like 30% or something.
Okay.
Yeah. The same form factor.
Got
I
it.
think they found some efficiencies with the new chip they're using. There's a new Teensy.
Teensy 4.0, brothers. Teensy LC is a chip. It's a microcontroller. I don't know how many people that we have as listeners actually follow this stuff, but a microcontroller is basically like a little tiny computer that does everything there's no operating system. You store your program on it and you turn it on and it runs that program. Arduino is the most popular microcontroller. So the Teensy is a competing with Arduino company made by Paul Stoffergen, who we actually had on the show. Was it like a couple years ago for Maker Faire? He developed a cool music synthesizer using his latest chip at the time. Now he's released the 4.0, and goodness gracious me, the power blows the other Teensies off the chart. There's a graph. If you look at it, it's just like every other Teensy that's ever been made is this little tiny slice of the pie, and this thing just blows them away. So if you're into microcontrollers, you want to program something that can go fast, the Teensy 4.0 may be for you.
And this is Teensy is one of your own personal faves. You use this a lot.
It's really well integrated into the Arduino IDE. Support is there for almost so many of the libraries. And Paul is just like a low-level genius, and he not only develops the hardware. By the way, this is a 6-layer board. I mean, there's a lot going on in this tiny little board. But he also helps to port all of the necessary libraries, and he's really involved in the community. So it's definitely a great platform to build things on. So I'll be curious to see what the power here. It's a Cortex with M7, if that means something to you, and it runs at I think 600 megahertz. It's blazing fast. It has pads on the back, so you can solder SD card reader directly to the chip, and I look forward to seeing what people can do. Fast LED was just ported over. So that's what I run GameFrame on. I might try to see what speed my animations run at now, things like that. But yeah, be curious to see what it does. I mean, it should be able to do like video decoding, like crazy new things that we haven't seen before. So look forward to seeing what that is.
Very cool. Speaking of Switch and games, loot boxes.
We kind of talked about this last week, and right after we finished recording, they announced this. But we talked about there was loot boxes being banned in a couple games because it's gambling.
Here.
And then right after that, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all said that any games that are on their platform that have loot boxes are going to disclose the rates of
Must disclose
the rates of the
those-
prizes.
which
within
to
them.
me, that really just confirms it as gambling.
It's totally gambling.
I mean, it's exactly how slot machines work. Slot
Yes.
machine manufacturers have to go to the regulators and disclose, and they get audited for the frequency of these jackpots, and that's exactly how what this sounds like. It's like a tacit acknowledgement that what they're doing is getting people to gamble.
No, I think we're going to look back on this period as when people used to smoke cigarettes and nobody knew about nicotine. This is a bad period in the history of video games.
Making so much money.
Off the kids.
Making so much money.
It's
off
not
the
cool.
Kids. Yeah. I want answer that question. I want every loot box. And I won't sell them. I just want every
Well,
loot
you know
box.
what games do is like they give you the loot box, but you have to buy the key.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's diabolical.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember those Snap sunglasses?
Yeah.
sure.
You know, Snapchat? Of
course.
Snap Corp had released a physical device. It was a little fun design. Had a camera on one corner. They're releasing their 3rd generation model. A 3rd gen.
They haven't
hardware.
had a whole lot of success yet.
They haven't. That was actually a big loss leader for them.
No, they had success that one day when they created like a mega storm when you got to buy the 1st gen out of a vending machine.
Right.
And people lined up for them.
Scarcity was a big thing for them, but it turns out if you're going to have artificial scarcity, you're not going to sell a lot either. It's based on how much money you spent developing them. Well, there's a 3rd generation. These are the Snap Spectacles 3. They are going to be $380, and they'll be released in November. This is a big redesign. It looks a little sleeker. Still has a
More fashion
novel-
forward.
Yeah, circular frames, they're circular lenses.
Yeah.
and
And square pictures.
and rectangular pictures.
Square.
Square pictures, that's right. But also 2 cameras. So it will allow for depth mapping and stereo imaging. So you can record in stereo.
Now, to be clear, there is not an augmented reality aspect here, right?
No,
These
no,
are
this is-
purely recording.
Purely recording devices and with no talk about stabilization. So you're going to get basically very shaky stereo imaging.
You could post-process it.
Yeah, you can crop in and post-process, but they're not to be viewed in VR, for example.
Yeah.
It's made to be viewed in some type of 3D viewer after the fact with some depth data. So
In the age we live in, which is bouncing back towards more privacy issues, this is weird to have this coming out now.
I'm not a big Snapchat user. I'm not really a Snapchat user at all. I'm curious for Snapchat users out there, is this something that people use as a part of their Snapchat diet
I think.
in content generation?
I don't know, man. I think that this is a sign of the future still. Like, I still imagine one day we'll all be wearing cameras that are just on all the time.
Yeah.
And people are trying to figure out when is the populace going to be ready for that.
Do you remember the movie Her? Spike
course.
Jones did?
Yeah, what are you talking about? Love that movie.
Love that movie. And remember one of the things that was in that movie? So it was Scarlett Johansson as an AI and Joker, Joaquin Phoenix falling in love with her, and they go on a date.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
And one of the things that when they go on a date is she's in the phone form factor. She's on a single camera phone, which is how backward thinking was that? You need at least 4 lenses on that phone
Right.
to be forward thinking. But he puts her in his shirt pocket, camera facing outward, peeking out in the top like a pocket protector. And basically she was doing surveillance. She was scanning the world,
Yeah.
but she convinced him to do it because it was a friendly ask. It was so conversational. Hey, buddy, let me see the world. I just want to get a sense of what's out there.
Yeah.
Have a fun conversation.
You make it sound nefarious.
Well, if you think of the future, there's nothing to say that, our phones in the apps we use, even in things like the Pokemon Go's, that's exactly what's going on.
So there's a great episode that came out this week on the podcast Flash Forward that's hosted by Rose Eveleth. That's about this idea of like facial tracking and AI and like what are the limits? And one of the questions she poses in the episode is like, okay, we can talk about this in a human context. What if we like take it to the extreme? Do animals have any sort of right to privacy in this frame? And does that change anything? Because maybe that informs where we actually are on this issue. And it's super gnarly.
I mean,
to
I think as
ask
a
that
society,
question.
we don't think the animals have the right to privacy anywhere.
Right, but exploring that question, I think, unpacks where it is that we want privacy and why, and where are the places we don't.
Do you think animals want privacy?
Oh, I don't know if they have the cognition to do this, but there's definitely been situations in scientific studies where animals have noticed they're being tracked and act differently. And so there's some cognition
Yes.
of being
Absolutely.
watched.
I totally buy that.
And that is, well, that is something.
Yes.
What that means, I don't know.
Interesting.
Because, I mean, then you apply that back to us. It's like, is the idea of us being watched, even if it's not being used for any nefarious reason, does it change our behavior overall? And does that violate a sense
I don't
of
think
norms?
so. I think the short-term memory that we have, or the fact that we can be so easily sold with convenience or entertainment, I think easily bypasses that.
These aren't easy questions. That's why it's fun.
It might change your behavior in a good way.
Oh, no, I don't think this is all deleterious stuff.
I mean, there was a whole Jason Snell talk about, a while ago about gamer points. Like, if we start to gamify everything in our lives, will that change our behavior? Will we want to read better books and if we get more life gamer points out of that stuff, right? If the gamification it really didn't happen because people only really cared about gamer score and gamification when it was tied to the things that they already wanted to do that were fun, not necessarily the stuff that they've resisted. There was definitely a line.
Really?
Okay, last bit of technology news. Hey, optics.
Oh, we got to talk about this because I don't understand this story, but we're going to try. So should I start? And you got to jump in because this is very confusing. So there's a well-known optical problem, and it's best probably characterized when you look through a viewfinder on a camera. Is that when you're looking through the center of that viewfinder, you can see things pretty clearly, but even the edges, even on the highest of high-end cameras, be a little blurry. And that has to do with the fact that there's no such thing as a perfect lens. Even the highest of high-end lenses are going to have some sort of defect, deformity, abnormality, so that when the light comes in and bends, it's not going to actually focus on one single point. It's going to have a focal area as opposed to a single point.
Aberrations.
And it's called aberrations. So can we actually solve this problem? And this problem, which I actually didn't know that it was the case, has been known about for almost a couple thousand years. Greek scientists have known about the physics of this problem for almost 2,000 years. And scientists have always thought there is a solution to this, but most of the ways that it's been addressed has just been through brute force computing. And it has shown up in how we construct lenses, where it's not a single lens, it'll be like 6 or 7 in series, as opposed to one lens that creates a more sort of perfect picture. Well, late last year, and it's just making the rounds now, there was a solution to this problem posed by a couple scientists. And I am going to put up the solution on the screen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a solution. The solution, according to the story, was discovered by one of the scientists. He was working on this problem. He was 2 postdocs working together on this. And it came to him while he was in his kitchen putting Nutella on a piece of toast.
That did?
And he had an aha moment that relates back to this.
A beautiful mind.
The idea of this equation, which explains some of the brute force computing that we've been doing, is that you can create a lens. I think it'll be still called a lens that is one unified piece that has different shapes attached to it. So it could have parabolic or hyperbolic shapes on one side and sort of like a normal spherical shape on the other that actually corrects all of this and leads to a single focal point. Whether we can manufacture it,
That's the
knows?
question, right? Because it's not a traditional lens we're talking about or a stacking of lenses. This requires manufacturing techniques, especially when we're talking about its small sizes for cell phones. The other place that this definitely applies to is VR, because the aberrations, the imperfections and the imperfect sweet spots of lenses that we get in VR lenses is a place where we see that most clearly. Or not clearly, I guess.
I mean, I don't know why we didn't get this earlier. I mean, it seems simple enough.
Yeah. He's got a big white chalkboard. If you give a big chalkboard and you get a lot of chalk, someone's going to bound and come up with this.
What I loved it, every single story I read about this. So when Norm put this in our show notes, I was like, this is so interesting. And I went down the rabbit hole. I read 6 different articles about this. All of them said to make this incredibly simple or to vastly oversimplify. Every single article had that sentence in it. Even the paper uses that phrasing.
So this is the
This
simple.
is how complicated this solution is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's a lot of variables in there. And
It's all algebra, too.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious.
Ooh.
All right.
Ouch. My head hurts. Okay. That's it for technology. Before we move on to the next segment, I want to let you know that this is only a test this week, also made possible with support and thanks to Bombas. When I was in school, a young lad, but in school, the coolest thing to wear, well, I think polo jackets, Nautica jackets. Yeah, those are Tommy Hilfiger jackets. Those are super cool to wear. Those who had it were cool, and those who didn't, well, they wanted to have them. Now the coolest things in school, Bombas socks. I think socks are very cool as an adult. Bombas are the most comfortable kids socks ever. They're designed with several comfort innovations that help them feel better than any other kids sock ever made. And they're so colorful, literally bursting with color. They even have a little colorful bee on them. And since Bombas donates a pair of socks for every pair purchased, you should get some for yourself too. You can send your kids back to school with Bombas, the socks that will keep them comfy, colorful, and ready to take on the school year. Visit bombas.com/test and get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/test for 20% off your first purchase. bombas.com/test. And thank them for supporting the show.
Now it's time for a moment of science.
I'm going to begin and end this segment with some video recommendations. And this is the first one. It was tweeted out from the tested account. This is the Smithsonian official video on the projection mapping of the Saturn V rocket on the side of the Washington Monument. I dare you to watch this and not cry. It was awesome. It was so awesome to see it, and their shots are so dead on that you can see everything in its glory. You can hear the audio perfectly.
You got to listen to it with good headphones, good speakers, because the audio is a big part of the experience here.
It was so mesmerizing, and just kudos to the entire team at 59 Productions that went through this. There's some videos of Adam talking to the team that put this together, but I implore you all to take 19 minutes and watch this movie.
You know,
it's exceptional.
I find the most striking thing about this video is that it's in the dark, of course, and you can see there's a massive, very densely packed crowd watching it, is how few, I mean, there are a lot, but the density of people holding up their phones is much less than I thought.
It's much less than you would see at a concert or even a sporting event.
Right.
People
started
watching.
They were watching it. They were in the moment.
All right. So a few stories this week. We'll get the serious one out of the way first. So in August of last year, there was officially an Ebola outbreak in the Congo. This is the second time this has happened. And Ebola is caused by a virus. The reason it's so well studied and so concerning is it's highly communicable, and its mortality rate, especially in this latest outbreak, was 67%. So if you get it, you're probably going to die. Now, that mortality depends on the viral load you get. Well, we have some good news. There was 4 clinical trials started with different drugs, but with different effects. One of them is like antibody suppressor, one is sort of an antiviral agent. 2 of them reduced that mortality to 20 to 30% for people that had a lot of the virus. And if you didn't have a lot of the virus, that mortality dropped to below 10%. We've never seen that kind of progress with Ebola before. This is massive news because it might give the ability for public health workers, if this is actually approved, to actually stem transmission in a pretty significant way. When the mortality rate is that high, it's basically really hard to sort of pen in the transmission of this person to person. If you're able to bring down the mortality rate, you can probably bring down the transmission rate too. So this is really, really, really wonderful news to see this kind of uptake.
And from my understanding, the earlier that this was administered, the survival rates skyrocketed.
Yeah,
so even though I think it's below 50%, it's still it's a big deal. And also they're working in partnership, I want to say, with the drug manufacturers. So manufacturing won't be a problem. Supply won't be a problem. So they'll be able to get this out there.
Regeneron is the pharmaceutical company that made one of the drugs, and they are they've partnered on this and trying to come up with methods to administer this. They still have a long way to go in the trial. And you're right, it is like detecting early, but it's not just detecting early, because this is a weird thing about Ebola. It's actually the viral load in your body. And it's not always, I mean, it's typically a function of time, how that viral load increases, but it's not always like the viral rate isn't the same person to person. Anyways, this is just great news. On to some more mysteries. So, Jeremy,
Yes.
I'm going to tell you about this group in Germany. They imported tons of snow from Antarctica, kept it frozen the whole time, brought it back to Germany, and then melted it. What the hell? Like, why? Why would they do that? Do you have any guesses?
What do they do with the melted snow?
Yeah, they filter it and then they vaporize it.
That wasn't the taste of albatross all along.
No. Any guesses? No?
I don't know, man. It could be like a slice of time.
It seems like a very carbon-heavy load to fly snow from Antarctica all the way to Germany. What they were looking for was concentration of something called iron 60, and the reason they were looking for iron 60 is they were looking for traces of a supernova blast that occurred across the galaxy in Antarctic snow. This snow, they confirmed, had only fallen in the last 20 years. So this isn't some like ancient ice like that's been buried in Antarctica. It's happening now. They found traces of iron 60 that only could be formed from a supernova explosion and cosmic rays coming and interacting. And so the dust from that explosion actually coming and hitting the Earth. And the reason they confirmed that is, even though iron 60 is here on Earth, the iron 60 is usually coupled with a manganese compound, and so they actually measured the concentration of this manganese compound in it, and there's no way that this was made on the Earth. So they confirmed that dust from a supernova from across the galaxy scattered iron on us in the last 20 years. It's like still depositing stuff on us right now. I think that's so incredibly cool and mind-boggling.
20 years.
The snow fell.
How far away? I see. So how far away? How many light years away was the supernova?
Let me look up that number, but it's far. It's really far.
So it traveled that distance, and
it traveled a long way,
and ended here in the past 20 years.
Yeah, I didn't write down how far it went. Sorry, but it's far.
I just want to be clear that the supernova didn't occur 20 years ago.
No.
Yeah.
Supernova, like 1,000, millions, maybe billion years in the past.
Holy cannoli.
All right. Who has a cat?
I have a cat.
And you're not fond of this cat?
Yeah, I don't want to throw JoJo under the bus.
Whoa, or do you? Depends the size of bus.
Does your cat like grass? Do you know about this phenomenon?
I couldn't tell you. We have a weird house with no backyard.
Okay. A lot of cats like the idea, if you expose them to grass, will start eating it and like gnawing on it. They exhibit weird behavior. And typically after they do that, they vomit. Very endearing cat behavior. Yeah. And they'll sell cat grass, like Trader Joe's sells it, and like pet stores sell it. And the idea behind it was always something very simple, that vomiting, they would do this when they're feeling sick, and they would just sort of evolutionary go over to grass, eat this stuff. It would force them to throw up, and they'd feel better. that's not entirely the truth. We actually got to the bottom of this from a study this week that came out in it was reported at the International Society for Applied Ethology in Norway this week. And they interviewed people that spent, on average, 3 or more hours a day with their cats and studied their behavior. And they were able to tell that what they're doing is an evolutionary-based behavior where they were trying to eject parasites from their gut. And so they would chew on grass in the wild and develop this behavior. But now they do it to build up the muscle tissue around that to be able to throw up. So it's kind of linked, but now we know why cats eat grass.
All right.
And it's gross, and it is to throw up. But it's actually a behavior that's been cooked in for a long time. All right.
Do you think cats don't know, though? Cats don't know why they eat grass. They just do it.
No, it's not cognitive. They
Yeah.
just it's something that's been evolved for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. Gross time. Ready?
Oh, God. Kishore is showing a video from Twitter and it depicts a snail. It looks like a snail. A little bit translucent snail. And the snail's head and eyes look like they got like moldy candy corn in them.
This is wonderful.
This is one of the
It
grossest
is
things I've ever
I
seen.
love-
horrifying.
I love this.
What has happened is this is a snail that's been taken over by a parasitic worm.
Oh.
And this parasitic worm has affected the motor function of the snail. So the snail comes to a stop. And then what it does is the parasite forces the secretion of this sort of like this agent that affects their eye stalks and makes them pulse with different colors. So it's typically like a green and an orange and a red. And the reason it's developed in the eye stalks is this is an attractant to birds that will eat the snail. And so the reason it's in the eye stalks is now the birds will come and pluck out the eye stalks of the snail only, where the parasitic worm has traveled. And then the worm goes into the bird gut to complete its mating cycle and then get pooped out by the bird and sort of conclude. This is how gremlins work. This is how the xenomorphs work to a certain extent. This explains so many science fiction movies. This is wonderful.
It's the grossest
This
thing.
is so exceptional.
I thought this
this is
was-
why Twitter exists, people.
I thought this was like the rare clown snail.
Nope, this is
from-
horrifying.
Parasites. Parasites.
Oh, my God.
This is one of the most horrifying things you've ever seen.
I take back every favorable thing I said about this video.
You said something favorable
Yeah, I
about
thought it looked amazing.
Oh, it's not good. And lastly, I have a recommendation of something to watch for science. Let me see if I can bring this up. Just give me 1 second. It is a story that was in Wired this week, but it's a story I've featured here on this podcast. So a long time ago,
Yes.
I talked about, oh no, I closed them. No, I've screwed up. I talked about this
Praying mantis.
praying mantis.
Wow.
I've
Wow,
lost
you got,
everything.
You've put up your other window here, Kishore.
Things have gone off the rails, and I
Yeah.
can't control it now.
I'm just gonna turn off the television.
There's nothing there. It's just,
I can't stop it.
I don't
It's
think-
like
you're not going to be able to see anything.
I can't control it anymore.
Kishore's war computers
Oh, no.
popping up.
Just
I didn't expect to see this.
all right. I've forced quit. That's the only way I could deal with this. It was a praying mantis that had 3D goggles printed on them. You might remember this from a episode. I think it was like 2-3 years ago now, and it was one of the most adorable things.
Yes.
I love seeing bugs that have goggles put on them. I've shown a parrot that had 3D printed goggles as it went through a laser field to
Right.
understand its wing patterns and the air sort of flow that comes off of them.
Yeah.
Well, this praying mantis, I think I got it. I'm back. This praying mantis that has 3D glasses on it. So
They'll deal with the glasses.
yeah, the praying mantises and most insects actually don't see color in the red spectrum, but they have incredible stereoscopic vision that surpasses ours. But we're trying to understand what channels of light they actually see to put together these stereoscopic images. Well, this week, Wired actually released a video with a writer, Matt Simon, that actually shows the process of doing this. And I think my computer is like freaking out, so I can't show it, but I'll somehow link it in the YouTube comments. And you can see how they actually constructed 3D goggles for a praying mantis.
Yeah.
And what they did is they came up with a station where they anesthetized the praying mantis by putting it in cold water. And then while it's sort of sedated, they basically used a combination of, I got it, guys. I can't see my...
Good.
They used a combination of what essentially is almost like a hot iron, like a soldering iron, and beeswax, melted a little bit of beeswax.
Oh, my goodness.
And then glued with that beeswax these cut out 3D glasses with different colors onto the praying mantis's eyes.
Totally did not harm the praying mantis, right?
I mean, I don't think this is entirely comfortable, but no, they did not harm, like, the praying mantis is alive. It wakes up. Then they play videos on a screen where it's sort of suspended next to it to see how it reacts to stuff that only showing in a certain wavelength of light, to understand how they react and how they develop. It is an awesome video. We rarely see kind of like the maker ethos of scientists behind the scenes of how they conduct this, and that video shows the entire process. It's awesome. All right, that's it. I've horrified enough people today.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
So we got just a little bit of VR news this week. First of all, industry news, big deal. It was announced this week that Nate Mitchell of Oculus / Facebook,
Founder.
one of the original co-founders of Oculus as a company, is leaving Oculus. Not sure where he's going. It sounds like he's going to take some time to recharge and travel.
Yeah.
Won't be leaving VR necessarily. Will be part of the community within a smaller role, but pretty big departure.
He was most recently, he went through a number of positions, obviously, but I think most recently he was head of product in virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't, for a while there, he was strictly Rift, and
Head of Rift.
And so my thought initially was, well, maybe Oculus is really going all in on Quest, and maybe
Prioritizing
that's part of the
desktop.
thinking. But if he's head of product, that would have enveloped Quest. So I'm not sure. I'd love to know his story. I'm sure I know a lot of people would.
I don't think we're going to get it.
No time soon.
Yeah, I mean, part of me feels like this is part of the Facebook Zuckerberg regime of cycling out a lot of the original people who were involved, and as VR is maturing or growing at speeds that they may or may not be happy with, changing it up and getting fresh blood in there.
I don't know. I mean, they were a startup. I mean, they were way before Facebook. They were a Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a part of it then. There was nothing to guarantee they were going to have some sort of buyout and become, multimillionaires.
Sure.
And Brendan is very much like a startup guy. I can sort of understand why he would desire that again. And I had thought maybe Nate was going to stick, long term at Facebook, but maybe he's the same way. Maybe he just wants to get back to something fresh, a scrappy little group of people.
I mean, the only thing we can say for certain is that VR is much bigger now than it was in 2012, and
Yep.
Oculus is a multi-product. It's a much bigger company in operation. That's not to say that they weren't suited for it, but it's also a different type of company and with different products and maybe different directions. And so the only thing we can look to is their next steps whenever that stuff comes out, whenever it's announced, and then we can speculate as to whether and why they aren't going to be involved going forward.
We're going to miss him. He's been a great guy to chat with almost
Yeah.
every year.
Absolutely.
I'm actually kind of excited to see what as a startup person, what he'll probably be back in the game in a couple of years
I wonder
with
if
some
he'll,
new idea.
I wonder if he'll stick with VR.
I mean,
wonder.
Or
let's say
something
if
else.
you were
Yeah.
in that position, and none of us are, but if we were there from the start, at Oculus at 2012 and got picked by Facebook because we wanted to sell to Facebook with its resources, and saw the development of the release of the Rift, first of all, the release and launch of the Touch, and then of Go, and then of Quest, and of Rift S. Would you feel like your job is done?
I don't know. I think if you founded a company, if you're that invested intellectually and emotionally in it, I don't think you're ever going to feel like it's done, because you probably have a vision that's inside your brain that will never be realized, or it'll take years and years. But this is also super typical of founders when they sell their company, that they don't always stick around.
And the visions and directions no longer become yours when someone else owns the company, and when there are other managers and other people that you work with. I don't think it says anything bad about the future products. Nope. I think that I still hope that they will invest heavily in desktop, and I hope that everything they've said will be true. That they're still paying attention to that, and there are still a lot of people, even though that weren't part of the founding team, that were there close to the beginning, shortly after the acquisition. The fact that John Carmack's still involved, Michael Abrash still involved.
It seems like Oculus
Jason Rubin's still involved.
Is in a good place right now. They've had a massively successful launch this year with Quest.
Yeah.
They sell everyone they can make.
Yeah. And we know that they probably want to make another one. And they hopefully, when they talked about the family of VR products at OC6 this year, they will still think of it as, maybe Go less so much, but Quest and desktop will still be two big strong pillars. But I'd be okay seeing Go.
Because they have some big desktop games in the works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Big desktop game, also out, updated
and PSVR.
Today, and PSVR, is No Man's Sky, the big Beyond update.
That people are talking about it like it's No Man's Sky 2.0. So if you remember the launch, and it seemed like it was underwhelming compared to all of the hype, you're going to want to look at it again. First of all, the update, everything about this, every update they've released has been free. So if you did buy it and checked it out, you've got this already. Just boot up Steam or wherever you bought it, and it will patch and update. This adds what they would have otherwise called 3 different updates they combined into one, and one of them is VR support, as well as expanded multiplayer support.
That feels like the big one.
Yeah.
It feels like VR support with support for index controllers, with some custom UIs and custom actions you can do in VR. They had definitely, I think they did a lot of configuration in terms of scale, because as a flat screen game, it's different than all encompassing for VR in terms of the landscapes, the trees,
and
interface, cockpits, and interface, of course. I haven't had a chance to jump in this. Literally came out this morning. The patch came out. I was hoping last night we'd have a chance to go in, but I'm very excited. Multiplayer is going to be there. So Jeremy, if you got time,
I want to.
Sure, let's jump in and do some exploring of the galaxy.
I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, this wishful thinking on a lot of people's part, but like this is potentially like a real killer app for a lot of people. Like this could justify a VR purchase because this is a massive, massive game where you can explore is it the solar system? It's not the solar. Is it the galaxy or is it the universe? I don't even know. But it's in a massive amount of space that's procedurally generated, and there's vehicles, and you take off and land from planets seamlessly, and you can go underwater, and it just looks spectacular.
I gotta say, I'm a little surprised, only because open world games I always associate to long periods in a game.
Yeah,
and like 2-3 hours just getting totally lost.
And does that lend itself to VR?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
And so
certainly people play Elite Dangerous, and that's the same kind of time frame involvement.
So I'm curious if after an hour this is just like overwhelming and too much, or if I'm just going to want to keep going and then just lose track of time, which is the holy grail, right?
Yep.
And then, last week you brought this up. We didn't get a chance to show this, but you did the FrankenQuest mod.
Do you know what the FrankenQuest is? It's a mod that joins the Vive Pro Audio Strap. Is that what it's called? I never remember.
Yeah, Deluxe Audio Strap.
Deluxe Audio Strap with the Quest. So you take the Quest strap off, which requires just like a little nudging of the connectors, and you remove it. You can easily put it back on, and you replace it with this Deluxe Audio Strap. And
you like
it gives you the rigid strap, and it gives you built-in headphones. So I think it's fantastic. It's a wonderful mod. I already had the Deluxe Audio Strap, and so I it was a no-brainer just to try it out.
So even though the deluxe audio strap was built with a different headset in mind, like did it maintain the balance
Yeah,
of the weight?
absolutely. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean, the Quest is just a bit front heavy for me. And so this counterbalances that small bit. Even though obviously the strap is going to be heavier, adding that weight to the back helps to offset it. Plus, you can ratchet it in better, and it grips the underneath the back of your skull better than the soft, flexible Quest strap does.
That's the thing we found with ergonomics for these headsets. It really is less about total weight than it is about ergonomics. The Halo strap design that's in PSVR and the Rift S is very comfortable because it particularly grabs the back of the head. I'm just a little bit less of a fan of that because it's the ring design. I think the pressure is applied in a weird way. I like the Deluxe Audio head strap a lot. I love the index heads, the strap and index. The way that the back part of it is wider and really cups. Like there's no way you can do it without it cupping the back of your head. I'm in that for much longer than I am in a Rift S.
Yeah, that's a great headset too. You can't fit the Franken Quest inside the official Quest case anymore. So you've got to find alternatives.
You probably have the standard Pelican ripoff case that's on.
No, there's another one that I got. It works more or less fine. But yeah, it's great. And you used to have to do it with Velcro, and a couple different people released 3D printable brackets that allow everything to snap together. And that's what I did, and it's been working great.
The audio is pretty good.
I mean, yeah. You can still use the Quest Audio if you just unplug the headphone jack.
Right.
But it's fine. It's good. Like, I actually didn't like the Deluxe Audio strap compared to, like, the original Rift, but it's compared to no over-ear,
direct.
it's an improvement. So, yeah.
I wonder if we're going to see a third-party audio strap come
I
on
wonder.
the market.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And then a little more Pavlov. You finally got a chance to jump in, Jeremy.
I did, yeah. And you were right. It's a good game. There's if you like Counter-Strike or deathmatch games, first-person shooters, it's a good time. I just thought it was funny because I'm a real run and gun player, so I'm not ranking very high on the scoreboards, but I had a good time jumping in there with you. I didn't expect the mode that you had talked up so much, TTT, to be as fun as that was.
And funny.
Yes. That is very much a social game, and
And people, there's emergent behavior.
You would
that pops out of
expect
that.
maybe the audience for a social game to not have crossover with Counter-Strike, where it's really about communication and talking and trying to deduce who's the traitor and who's the villager, but it is like people get together, they talk things out, they try to intimidate one another, they try to figure out, they try to fool one another. It's
You watch the movements, people backing away, where they're looking.
Right.
There's a lot of that subtlety that really can make or break a game that I think really is really great for VR.
Yeah, and you start counting people. You know how many are left, and you notice somebody's missing. You're like, well, where did they go?
Yep. There's also a prop hunt mode, which is also another Gary's Mod adaptation for Pavlov. This is a hide and seek game. It's another very popular one for Pavlov right now. You can find a lot of YouTube videos. A lot of YouTubers are streaming it, and I had a lot of fun on this. This is a one map. It's a warehouse, and it's hide and seek. One team searches for the other team, but the other team gets to hide, and the way you hide is by grabbing any object in the room, and then you become a clone of that object.
And you can walk around as that object.
So I can grab a tiny soda can on the table, and I become a tiny soda can, and I run to a vending machine and hide amongst the other soda cans.
But then you'll eventually be forced to say something, and everybody hears it.
Like emit in audio.
They hear
Why
it
are you forced to say something?
so that people
How?
can find you.
Oh, so it's like a Marco Polo a little bit.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but you don't want to be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so they have as part of the map, there are audio taunts that get downloaded, and your character will emit the taunts as the game gets close to the end. So you can't as easily hide, and you got to run. And you can change it to other objects. So you see a couch running across the room, and suddenly it becomes a barrel, and it suddenly becomes a briefcase, and
Is it the kind of thing where you can memorize the map and you would
Yeah.
notice
A
when
little
something's out of place?
But you also doubt yourself. There are certain places where I know there are 4 water, buckets here, but
Well, you don't
Are
want to
there
just shoot
4?
anything because
yes.
when you shoot, you actually lose 5 health for every shot. So you can only shoot 20 times.
Yeah, you can guess 20 times, and if you guess correctly, your health won't go down, and it'll get actually bumped back to 100.
One shot, one kill, or is it?
No, it allows for if you get shot as a prop, you have a chance to run and re-hide. But everyone starts chasing
You
after
run really fast too. But the thing is, it's not a serious game. When you start running as a soda can, people flip out and they say, "Oh my God, it's a soda can!" And everyone starts laughing, and they can't catch the soda can, and then they run over and they try to find it.
So what's awesome about this is I'm so used to turning off group chat in certain VR games.
Yeah.
And this sounds like one where they built a community where not only is it a good game mechanic, but people are having fun with that.
I was thinking a
interface.
lot about this last night, the TTT game mode, because at a certain point, after playing for a couple hours, the gameplay does become a little predictable, right? Like there are certain things that people say or do, and I'm like, how do you increase replayability? And I was wondering, how could this type of game scale to a PUBG or Fortnite level? What would it mean to have a Mafia-style, werewolf-style, TTT-style game in a big island with 100 players? And the way I thought about it working would be if it was started off in groups of players. You have 100 players, and everyone spawns in a party of a 5 randomly. So you are in your group of 5, and you know how in PUBG the wall closes in.
Yep.
It would be the reverse of that. You would be on your part of the island, and you would have a ring that you and the other 4 people, or you and the other 5 people, a small group, could not leave until only the innocent people were alive, or only the traitors were alive. So you have to have your little mini social experiment to resolve who the traitors or the innocents are in that small area. And once it's done, then you, the survivors of that group, find the next group.
I think,
and you got to convince them, we were the sole survivors. We were the innocents.
Right. Or you have to, obviously, you might be.
Or you might be.
Yeah.
Or they're like, ooh, there's a lone survivor coming over that hill. Is that a lone traitor, or is it a lone innocent?
One
that's,
left.
That joins us. And it's the bigger group and the bigger group and the bigger group. And as you get to the end of the game, it's all the survivors
I think you've got
left.
a winner design there. I just wonder if it's possible to make a game that's as successful as Fortnite or anything like that requires voice chat. Requires it.
Yeah. Well, this is why I think that the scalability, I was thinking, if you're talking about not conversations between, conversations between 100 people at once is going to be chaos. And if you segment that to splitting people off and then kind of tier it up, so it's only, 5, 10 people at a time, right? You're never going to get it more than 30, 20 people at the end. And it might all be traitors. And you might be it's all left with traitors, but 3 innocents. And they have no idea how many of them, are left. And I think that'd be a really fun way to do a PUBG survival version of the Mafia game.
I'm with you. Who's going to do it?
I don't know. Where's the game developer button? Someone listening to the podcast, make that version for Rec Room, for Pavlov.
Rec Room just says 32 players.
I know.
Yeah.
I think there's also a technical limitation between that. Yeah. All right. That does it for the podcast this week. Next week, I'm not in, but I think we'll have a special guest.
Yeah. Norm's going to Parts Unknown, so if you're in Parts Unknown as well, say hi to Norm.
That's right.
Anything coming up on Tested this week?
We have a lot more videos from Adam's trip to the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, including a tour of their restoration facilities. And also, is it next week? We have videos from Simone and I and Ariel, Simone and I, went to NASA Ames and got to check out some of their really cool facilities, including their vertical motion simulator, their giant 20G centrifuge, and some other cool things. So videos coming out about that next week as well.
If you're at Silicon Valley Comic-Con, come say hi. Adam has signings, and he's on a panel. Norm is on a panel.
I'm on a panel. Yes, I'm moderating a panel with some people, developers in VR. Darshan is going to be there talking about big screen.
Nice.
And some other companies as well.
Gary's going to have a booth.
Yeah,
he's going to be there signing things.
Yeah.
So go say hi to
I
Gary.
just saw on Twitter he's making a big announcement tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I can't wait. For you guys listening, it will probably be today. That does it for this week. Any outro? We got an outro this week?
Wohawk's back with another one called Trek Museum.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
Top story. There's a new pinball machine in town.
No.
Wrong segment.
No.
Oh.
It was so difficult to choose what the top story would be. No, it wasn't. It's Picard. It's Star Trek Picard. It's the Picard Museum.
I think we should talk about our experience. Fanboy all over this place.
In-universe location.
Perfectly authentic. Has been, but celebrate him.
Exactly.
Because he's over.
Wonderful
Miniatures.
various ships. All the ships. Command Age, Enterprise D, Galaxy Class, Enterprise E.
The Enterprise E. The captain's yacht.
Even the captain's yacht.
My favorite miniature.
Oh, the undership.
Yeah, the
Yes.
undership.
No tchotchkes?
Dropping knowledge bombs. Getting a few things wrong. Special relic of Starfleet. He's no longer in Starfleet.
Mod's battle. Wedding uniform.
Archives.
Picard. Dharma dagger.
Pops. Very unsweet.
Ruskin flute.
I think the flute is awesome to see.
No, not again. I was most impressed.
You don't hear this in the video, but Norm does this, and then like we're walking around maybe 30 seconds later, and the music comes on over like the speaker
It was
system.
queued up.
And he was right. Like he nailed it.
Of course he was right.
I think I want to hire Wohawk to follow me around at my company meetings and put together.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, if you ever needed an advertisement for this podcast, what do you get when you listen to this and only test? Just play with that.
Play the Wohawk clips.
Yeah.